You want to experience comic culture in sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
What's up, the internet? It's Kyle. How you doing? It's good. It's good to hear. Dan is not. Like, he's not here. He's also not doing, be thinking about Dan. He's not feeling the best. I appreciate that. Thank you. So this is In Stores This Week. This is the show where we talk about books that are in stores this week. That's why it's called In Stores This Week. And so the week Dan sends us 13 books, and I added 14. He chooses to get sick. I see how that goes. Skipping out on his responsibilities. Making Jay and I read all these books, and some of them weren't good. Some of them were great. There was one, I think it had words in it. Don't know. But we'll get to all that in just a second here on In Stores This Week. Sponsored by, as always, ComicShopLocator.com. So we will be right back in just about 22 seconds here on In Stores This Week. And Jay will join me. Welcome back to In Stores This Week. I'm still Kyle, and
Still
that
Jay.
is Jay. Dan is not here. I don't have like a paper Dan or a puppet or any of that. Maybe we can make the little man on the airborne bottle, Dan. I don't know.
Awesome.
I don't know. But as I said before, he's a little under the weather. I'm not exactly above the weather,
Neutral.
but we're here. So this is In Stores This Week, as always. We talk about books that are in stores this week. And I want to take a minute to shout out our frequent sponsor, ComicShopLocator.com. ComicShopLocator.com. Type in the zip code of the area where you are, and it will point out comic shops nearby to you. I was in the greater DC area this weekend, and I went and visited Third Eye Comics. And I found their locations that were near to me on Comic Shop Locator. So it works. Hello, Cool Gamer. Thank you for being here and thinking we're awesome. Also, I'm sure Sean is out there somewhere because he normally is. And Sean, Cool Gamer's comments do not apply to you for not being here. Yeah. Throwing shade early and often. All right. Jay, should we get started, or do you want to ramble on for like 5 minutes?
Man, there was a lot of books this week.
That's true. We read a bunch.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't get them all mixed up.
I'm sure I will. Let's just get started with it then. So this is the first book on the list. Dune, Canley? Dune, Waters of. Why did I read this book? Number 2. As with the first Dune, I did not love it. I blame Kevin J. Anderson for no fault of anyone's but mine. So, what did you think, Jay?
Well, first off, the book and the book's art is just, it's killer. I love
the art is great.
I'm actually starting to get into this story. There was a part when they're starting this big plan that they have going on. I got a little nervous for them. And usually if a book can do that, I'm like, okay, the writing is going somewhere. I was like, man, are they going to make it off here? Or are these people going to recognize them? Like, I'm really excited to see the rest of this plan to take down what is his name, Beast Raven or Robin, and the Harkonnens. I'm excited for the next issue.
I just keep waiting for the Dune buggy to show up.
Not sure there's going to be a Dune buggy.
Well, Spider-Man can have the spider buggy. Dune can have the Dune buggy.
I'm waiting for the worms, giant worms. Is that what they were? Sandworms?
In Tremors?
Well, I thought Dune had some giant worms. Come on, man.
It did. I'm just referencing things I prefer to Dune.
Hey, I love Tremors, so no hate.
So did I. Especially the video or the movie where they have to order a nug. All right. No, like I said, Dune is one of those things you either love it or you hate it, and it's not my cup of tea, and it never has been. So I find reading this book hard. The art is incredible. The writing is solid. But it's one of those things, if you don't like something, you don't like it.
Yeah, understandable.
And that's Dune for me. So it's a tough read. I'll continue to read it for review on this show. But it's not a book I would be picking up off the rack.
Gotcha.
Speaking of books I probably wouldn't pick up off the rack. This is Justice Warriors #1 from Ahoy Comics. And here's what I'm going to say. The more Ahoy Comics we read, the more comfortable I get with things that are bat crap crazy. And this is a level of bat crap crazy that I was unprepared for. That said, not a bad book. But not a book that I would have A, picked up off the rack, or B, found myself reading under much any other circumstance. I'm happy I did it, though, because Ahoy Comics, I think, is where the work is being done in comics that can't be done anywhere else.
Yeah.
There is no other publisher that could publish this book.
No.
And that's a great thing.
Yeah. This was such a strange book. I mean, from human shields to being arrested for having your body taken over by something and getting more jail time because of what took you over, and then trying to arrest the bus.
Right.
And all these different, there's anthropomorphic stuff. There's stuff that, like, poop emoji is one of the cops, basically.
Jeff Wedding, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 bats being the craziest, how bat crap crazy is it? 37.
Okay. I was being modest. But
37.
Trying to arrest a bus. Trying to arrest the bus.
A self-driving bus. Yeah. They want to arrest a self-driving bus. Okay, so you guys know in that movie, The Suicide Squad, not the terrible one, but the good one with Idris Elba.
The Suicide Squad, yes.
Right, the Suicide Squad. The good one with David Dastmalchian as a polka dot man. You know how when Starro attaches himself to you, he controls your body? That happens to people in this book. But then when they kill the Star, you get arrested for letting the Star control you, and you do more time for having let that happen.
Oh my god! One of the first things that I thought of after I got done with this, it's like, what episode of Adult Swim did these folks watch when they wrote this?
Well, there's so many other kinds of. So the police chief in this book feels like someone out of Afro Samurai. If Afro Samurai had characters with a social media addiction. It's like there's a scene in there where they're at a funeral for a cop, and it's like if Joel Osteen was sponsored by Coca-Cola. This book is just wild. Every part of it. And I see where the allegory is, right? Like, it's about people living in a bubble versus people who live outside of the bubble, and how if you only ever interact with what's inside the bubble, you only know what's inside the bubble, and that's normal. And I could, and they talk about deep fakes and this kind of stuff. And so it really is a kind of an allegory for the different sides of the political spectrum that we find ourselves in. I get that. But I don't need to hear it coming from a talking police frog.
Oh, Swamp.
Right, whose name is Swamp.
Or
Or
the mayor's
his
dropping
partner,
an
his
album.
new partner, that is a poo emoji.
And the mayor dropping an album.
Right. The mayor is Prince, essentially. Like, everybody should be reading Ahoy Comics, because then everybody's brain can feel like mine did after reading this book. Like, I had to take a break.
It was a lot.
Oh,
man.
We're going to go from way outside the box to way inside the box. In terms of Invincible Red Sonja number 9, this is the Jimmy Palmiotti Amanda Conner run. I don't have a lot to say about this book. And what I mean is that it does what it's supposed to do. It continues the story. It's proper Red Sonja writing. It's proper Red Sonja art. It's proper Dynamite telling those stories. Like, this book is a solid double up the middle. It's not too flashy. It's not too much. It's not too little. It's just right. It's Mama Bear's porridge in terms of the comic book world. And I commend Amanda and Jimmy for doing it that way. Because it would be very easy to overwrite or underwrite this story. And rather than do that, they do a great balanced job of it.
Well, I gotta say this. Usually I'm a little down when it comes to Dynamite books. I enjoyed this one. The art was a little weird because it felt like it changed halfway through the story, but it wasn't enough to take me out of the story. And this book is actually a perfect example of what I was talking about last week with my problem with Red Sitha, the dialogue. Sonja feels like she belongs in this world. These people use the same dialect, the same vernacular. I was able to get into the story a lot more than when I read Red Sitha, which again, Red Sitha is not a bad book. That's just a weird thing that I have about it. But this one, I mean, she says at one point, go back to the sphincter of whatever dark god spat you out. And I was like, okay. She talks like the other people in this book. But
yeah, I get that.
Good.
I get what you're saying, and I understood it last week. But I think that's the benefit to the way Sonja can be presented, right? Like, in some places she's an outsider, so she's going to speak in a different way than other people. Right. In this world, this is a universe in which she is perfectly aligned.
Yeah.
So her dialect making sense with everything else seems right. So, I get it, and it's a storytelling tool you can use or not. So, all right. You ready to move on to the next one?
Yes, sir.
All right. Star Trek Discovery, Adventures in the 3200th century, 32nd century.
32nd.
32nd. Here's the thing. Wars, Galactica,
Yeah.
Trek for me. So I am not as versed in this particular part of the Star Trek world, right?
So we're on the same level here.
I'd have a much better if this was TNG or even DS9. But this is the universe I'm not wholly familiar with. And I didn't like it or dislike it. I nothinged it. But I think there's a unique thing happening in comics right now that's great, where you have existing IPs, so Star Trek, Firefly, The Rocketeer, Buffy, where these stories are being told that are outside of your traditional methods, right? Like with Star Wars and Marvel, it's different. But this is one of those things where it's great to have expansion of the universe outside of the small world they're given normal.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good part of that.
First off, alien dinosaurs. Alien dinosaurs. That was the second, I like this one. I know we read another Star Trek Discovery one before, and I wasn't that into it. But this one, it was emotional, kind of deep. It felt like it had a great payoff in the end. Even though the main character, Linus, was an alien, their inner thoughts and their self-doubt, it felt very human to me. Like, because we've all had those. Why isn't this happening? When I was a kid, it was like, all my friends are shooting up to 6 feet tall, and I'm still 5'3", stayed 5'3" my entire life. But the only issue that I had with the book is it felt like the problem that they had was kind of over and solved way too quickly. It felt like, I don't know, the overall message and what happens to Linus was great, but that part of it just felt like kind of rushed. It was kind of like, hey, here's a problem, boom, he solved it already.
Right. You didn't have time to check out the beat while his DJ revolved it.
Yeah, exactly. Vanilla Kyle.
Should I leave?
No. It would just be me, and that would be horrible.
Well, all right. Another book that I would call a real solid entry from Dynamite Comics with these characters. I have a problem that I will cop to, especially when it comes to some of these Dynamite books. I can't keep one Vampirella book straight in my brain from the other Vampirella books we're reading. However, this is one that I'm not seeming to have that problem with because it feels vastly different from the others.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, it's like I've caught myself confusing Pantha with Sheena with some of these kind of things. It just happens. We read a lot of books for this show, right? But this one stands out to me and doesn't read like the rest of the Vampirella books, and it makes it for a very interesting palate cleanser in the middle of some of this stuff. And we'll talk about it more when we get to the Betty Page book later on. The things that feel like outliers with these characters we know so well, like Vampirella, like Red Sonja, like Betty Page, like the Jennifer Blood series we've been reading, that feel outside of what we've come to expect from those characters, really, really have this ring of I don't even know what the word is I'm looking for, right? They feel new and fresh without having to be.
Yeah.
It's a warm blanket. It's a comfortable couch. It's, something really well, but still new and refreshing.
Yeah. I would honestly, if you're like me and you don't know, like I know Vampirella, I know of Barbarella, I know of those characters, but I've never actually read them. I would suggest if you were going to read right now, if you're going to pick up a Vampirella book, I would pick up this one. I really like the first issue. This is just another Dynamite book that I'm starting to enjoy. The visuals are great. The story is solid. I'm very interested to learn about these weapons that people have and what is actually happening to them. I'm really interested, and there's it's one of those things where this book so far, hopefully the third one, sticks to this format. It makes me want to learn more about this character. Like, reading the newer stuff, I'm like, man, I want to see if I can go and find some trades of older stuff, because I believe Christopher Priest wrote Vampirella too, didn't he?
Yep.
And I'm a Christopher Priest fan, so yeah, I would definitely recommend this series if you've never read any Vampirella stuff.
Yeah. So, and this is, if I could soapbox for a minute, and I would say this to every publisher out there: 1, maybe 2 series at a time with a character.
Yeah.
Marvel has 9 different X books. DC has something like 8 different Batman books.
Mm-hmm.
Dynamite has 3 or 4 different Vampirella or Vampirella universe books. Same with Sonya. Same with, with IDW, 1, maybe 2 Buffy or Power Rangers books, right? Like, bring that number down.
Yeah.
Because then people like me who want to read them all don't get confused by, wait a minute, this is not the story I just finished reading a minute ago. Oh, it's not the same character. It's a different version of the same character from a different.
Yeah.
It just makes it easier.
Yeah. I mean, Valiant did that once with Bloodshot. Bloodshot had 3 or 4 different titles going at one time, and it was like you get confused on the stories.
Right. It just, I think it would go a long way towards building fandom if it was, here's a small, easier to bite off sample.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, the writing has to continue at the level it's at, because some of this writing is fantastic.
Yes.
So I don't know where that balance is struck, but I think it needs to be. Ken, what's up, buddy? All right, let's. Here's a book that when we got together and we started talking about it before the show, you had to remind me had words in it. This is Grim Fairy Tales Presents Swimsuit Edition, 2022. There is a story at the beginning about, is it a harpy?
You ever seen the episode of Futurama where they're traveling in the time machine and they get to the one spot where they think it's a wimpy guy in the ocean and it's a big freaking shrimp? Well, this isn't a shrimp, but there's something attached to this person's leg, and you're like, okay, it's a lady floating on a door, and a ship comes up, and they're going to rob.
A victim of a shipwreck.
Yeah, and this party ship of these guys, I can't remember what they're doing.
Drug dealers. They're drug dealers.
There you go. They're gonna they think she's dead, so they're gonna rob her and throw her back in the water. Well, they start pulling her up, and one of the guys like, man, this woman is heavy. And that's when you see this thing attached to her leg. Spoiler alert for a 5-panel story. This thing just wrecks them. And then she's back on the door, floating away. And then the rest of it is basically artists. It's like an artist showcase of the characters in bikinis.
Pinup art. Yeah, it's pinup art.
It reminded me of what was it, the Marvel swimsuit specials from back in the day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this is. It's a pin-up issue, artist showcase thing. There is a 5-page nothing story at the beginning. That it's funny. The payoff is funny. This thing eats all these drug runners and these girls that are with them, and then goes back to being "I'm so hungry," which is basically the story of every fat kid ever right after he eats dinner. Like, it was fine, and then there were the swimsuit pinups that were great. There always are. So this is a book that, again, not reinventing the wheel,
No.
but super super interesting. 5 pages, and then the rest of it was, if you're into that kind of stuff, man, do it.
I mean, the art's great. Like,
Right.
honestly, it's really good.
Absolutely. All right. So I think Jay and I are both really high on this book coming out of issue number 1. This is Quests Aside number 2. But this book to me, and we kind of talked about it earlier, Jay and I, before we went on the air, this book felt expositional in the middle of a story. It felt like this was set up and kind of explaining things after the story is already going a certain direction.
Yeah.
So I get why that can work, and I get how it works in comics, and it might be great. But this book to me felt a little incomplete or a little bit of a letdown after number 1. I also will keep reading it. Like, I don't think it was very bad. I don't think it was bad. Like, there's a cliffhanger at the end that's real solid. There's a B story arc that is their undead chef with his talking butcher's cleaver, who's married to the mage who's the barmaid. Like, there's a B story there that's pretty interesting. So I'll keep going, but this book felt less good than the first issue.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think one of the other most interesting parts was the secret meeting they were having. But outside of that, for me, it felt like we're going to set some stuff up, but it's almost a filler, but not quite a filler. I'm really hoping though, and knowing Vault, because Vault's usually really really good with their books. Knowing Vault, I have a strong belief that issue 3 is going to pick it back up.
Oh, sure.
It's just I wanted to know more about this curse. I wanted, and maybe they're kind of stringing that along for a little bit longer. But yeah, I was like, man, you almost could have taken part of this book out and put it in another story, and it would feel a little more complete. Or we missed something. Like, there's a 1.5 out there.
Right. All right. Next up, this is from Comixology Press, Comixology Originals. This is The Never-Ending Party number 1. Jay, do you want to take the lead on this, and then I'll come in behind you on it?
Yeah. So you remember when we were talking about crazy books?
Yeah.
This is the other one. And I think this one, while not visually as crazy as the other one, I think this one is on par with the actual craziness. I had a hard time with this one, and it wasn't because it wasn't good. It was the characters themselves. They all looked the same. Like, I wouldn't be able to tell you one character from the other one. And I kept having to go back when I'd hear a name, and I'm like, wait a minute, which one was that one? And I'd go back and be like, okay, it's this person. And then I'd hear another name and have to do the same thing. I'd have to go back and forth because all of them look so similar. But, it's a weird, culty, cannibalistic 90s club, and then we go to the future. like 15 years later, and then I still don't recognize the characters that I just saw. I don't know. I mean, I would definitely give issue, the next issue a shot to see if, I don't know. It feels like there's the flashbacks in between. I wanted more. Like we started out and I'm like, okay, well, why is that happening? And then we go back to the present and something else is happening. Then we go back to the past. I'm like, okay, so why did this happen? Like, I want to know more about this cult, I guess. The cult of, what is it, Dionysus?
It's not a cult.
Oh, not a cult. Okay.
So the book is centered around this Wiccan ritual that happens in the first flashback of the story, and it goes from there. The problem is that this thing is set, at least in flashback, in the 1990s New York, Miami, LA club scene. So I'm not sure which city it's supposed to be in, but they're doing this Wiccan ritual, and drugs are introduced that take it to a whole nother level. And there's some traumatic outcomes from it. And so you fast forward to the future, and the people who survived are all kind of trauma bound by this thing that they all mutually experienced, but they all have different memories of it because they all had a different trip. And now you find that some people are still very much reliving and living in that pain and that trauma, and other people have moved on, and other people are really easily triggered by it. And there may have been some truth to what actually happened that is universal. And the end of the page is that we don't know enough to know what we don't know. But there was a lot of kind of unrecognizable cannibalism mixed with drug behavior that made it super hard to follow.
Yeah.
So, written by Rachel Pollack, though, so that's that's one of those people that I would trust pretty heavily with the story. So, all right, The Rocketeer, The Great Race #3. That's starting to become the Rocketeer story we all know and love, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
This felt like a Dave Stevens.
Dan? Is
Dan
it Dave
Stevens?
Stevens or Dan Stevens?
Dave Stevens.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Dan Stevens for some reason.
It's because Dan's always the one talking about him.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, this felt like a Dave Stevens story, if ever there was one. You've got your Nazis, you've got your good guys that are the Americans, you've got your weird French people, you've got your unbelievable, I can't believe they pulled this off, and now here comes the Rocketeer thing, and it just hits every box you look for in a Rocketeer story.
Yes.
For the first time, I think, in this series. And, we find our main character kind of in bed with maybe a not so savory character. We don't know that for sure yet, but it certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
So it's just starting to feel more and more like the Rocketeer I've always known and been a fan of.
Yes. Every time we read this, I want to watch the Rocketeer movie. Every time, especially with this one. Especially with this one. This is the third issue, and now I'm starting to get that, man, I got to know what happens next feeling. We learn more about certain characters in this one. There are certain things starting to come into focus, but now there's another mystery with the guy that is it Cliff's boss or just the guy that owns the plane?
Kind of both in this regard. So Cliff is the guy who owns the plane is who Cliff is working for, but he's like a Howard Hughes, Howard Stark kind of guy, right? He's an inventor who has hired Cliff to fly his plane with his proprietary fuel and his proprietary engine and his proprietary this, that, and the other. So, yes.
So not much of a spoiler, but proprietary fuel blend, and he's got a rocket pack.
Uh-huh.
You kind of draw conclusions of what happens there.
It's true.
Yeah. This the end of this book definitely had me intrigued, and I'm hooked now.
Yeah.
I'm hooked now. I'm
sure.
hoping
And
the rest of the series goes like this.
for the first time in this book, Betty gets her licks in, which is good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see Betty kicking some butt.
Not just a damsel in distress.
Correct. All right. From Mad Cave Studios. We don't get Mad Cave books all the time, but when we do, they're great. Potions Inc. #1. I was real excited for, and I still am. It's the story of a family of magicians in a kind of fantastical, magical world. But they have to compete with other magicians in this fantastical, magical world to earn a living. And we find out that they are the guardians of this sort of ancient magical power. But we only find that out when they lose it, and their children are sent on a quest to retrieve it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where this issue leaves off. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens in #2 when the questing actually starts.
Yeah. This one was the last one on the list. I skimmed this one, but I liked the art style for this story. It's a Mad Cave book, and much like Vault and Scout and Place and things like that, they usually deliver. And I've never really read a bad book from them. I will go back after we're done tonight. I will go back and finish reading this one. I did skip to the end though, because I just wanted to see, and it's one of those if I would have read through the story, because I read the beginning and then I skimmed through a little bit and then I read the end. If I would have read the whole story, I probably would have guessed what was going to happen at the end, where they were going to end up, just from reading the beginning of the story, because it felt kind of foreshadowy. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested. I just need to read the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the next book is the deepest run of any book, with the exception of Star Trek Discovery and Invincible Red Sonja we have on the list this week. This is Betty Page, Alien Agenda #4. Now, I'm gonna say something that's gonna sound a little strange. Ani Mia writes this book, and the fact that more people know Ani Mia as a cosplayer than a writer is just a damn travesty. Because she is absolutely just crushing it.
Yeah.
This book was so freaking good.
Yeah.
Oh, I am loving this series as much as anything Dynamite's publishing right now. Like, just, it's not even close. I look forward to this book because this is, if Betty Page was Indiana Jones, but she didn't have all of the same hang-ups that Indiana Jones has. Right? Like, she's open-minded and smart, whereas Indiana Jones is a little bit closed-minded and pretentious. Like, this is just perfect for me.
Yeah.
And I loved every page. I read this thing. It might have taken me 5 minutes to read the whole book. I was just thump, 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 thump.
Yeah, that's the
So
great.
good.
That's the greatest part about this one. It feels like it's over. Like it's the best part and the saddest part at the same time, because it feels like it's over before you really get started. And in my notes, I wrote down, they're still traipsing around the globe like Indiana Jones, because that's exactly what this reminds me of, is Indiana Jones, but better, but even better. And right now the writing to me is so good that even if the next book, the next however many issues it's going to be, is still them just finding clues to go to the next place, I'm down for it.
Right.
I'm down for it. It'd be awesome if they find what they're finally looking for, but the writing is so good. I'm kind of hoping they don't just yet. I'm kind of hoping it keeps going for a while.
I stared at the end of this book for a lot longer than I should have. And I need to go back and reread it kind of maybe a little bit slower with a fine-tooth comb, because there's a puzzle in the book that they straight up challenge you to solve in the last 2 panels. And it says all the clues are there.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I didn't see it, but I'm going to go back through and find it. Like,
exactly. So, and that fourth wall break at the end.
Right. No, it was great.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Get on this, folks. If you haven't read this at all, get on this, because it is so good.
Absolutely get on this one. All right. Next up, The Orcs, The Curse, #1. This was a lot of fun. It's a kaboom title, which means it's an all ages book. It certainly didn't feel all ages all the time.
No.
But it was. And I understand how it could be. This was a fun story that painted orcs in a much better light than orcs are often painted. As someone who plays an orc a lot of the time in D&D, orcs are not always looked at as the smartest, most intelligent, bravest, whatever. And this paints orcs in a good way. At the beginning, there's this whole thing where one of the characters is trying to hire the orc army, and the orc army is like, here's a contract.
Yes.
Like, cash up front. Like, oh, the orcs are, like, they've figured it out that this is how you don't get taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
So I really was pleased with issue 1 of this book, and I'm interested to see where it goes from here, because it feels like it kind of ends on an end, doesn't it?
Yeah. And
so I'll be interested to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, it was an all ages book, so luckily Dan's not here to do his it's too childish kind of thing, like he did with Dirk's book.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just messing, Dan. We miss you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really, for an all ages book, I really like this. I mean, the human-like birds and orcs, obviously, because that's what it's called, and a wizard that at first, before I really got into the story, I was like, man, why does this guy remind me of Gargamel and the Smurfs? There was something about how he acted at the beginning. But man, this book was 52 pages, and much like the Betty Page book, it just flew by. Like 52 pages, and I was like, man, that's kind of a lot for a first issue. So I'm hoping it's not just a one shot.
No, I feel like it's probably like 4 long issues as opposed to 6 or 8 22-page issues.
Well, I'll take it. I'll take it, because those were 52 pages I wasn't bored with.
Right.
So I need more. And the orcs in this, man,
hysterical.
So great.
The Gargamel analogy is strong. You said that, and I went, "Oh yeah, that's who that was. That's totally Gargamel. Yeah, that makes sense." Or it's like if Who's the one from Lord of the Rings? The wizard. Oh, if Gandalf, you got Gandalf from Wish.com. Not very good at his job.
No.
So
good book though.
Next up, this was if the last book on the list hadn't been on the list, this would have been my favorite book of the week. This is The Ward at #1 from Dark Horse Comics by Kevin Scott. This is if Supernatural met ER. And I'm talking like George Clooney ER.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what fantasy story, has all of these characters in it.
I just thought if you're into mythical creatures and doctor shows,
right? It's a mythical creature meets Grey's Anatomy.
There you go.
Matt, it is phenomenal. This book was so much fun. And the cool thing is you get to watch so much of the story unfold through the eyes of Wilf, who is the main character's neighbor, who is not a mythological creature. He's not a centaur or a demon or one of the other things that you run into in this world. He's just a dude.
Yeah.
And you get to unpack what the Ward is from them. And going from there, it kind of gives you a lens to see this whole thing through.
Yeah.
So
I'm definitely keeping my eye on this one. The cover, I get the cover is, something that usually attracts people to pick up a book. But I think if they just would have gone with something a little simpler, like the title and then the one doctor, I forget her name, but the main character, if they just would have had the title and the shot of her, you get in the first couple of pages that this is going to be mythological creatures, ghosts, demons, centaurs, all that stuff. It would have been, it would have been an awesome little twist to find out then. That being said, though, if I walked into my local comic shop and I saw this cover, yeah, I'd grab it. No doubt.
Right. And you know what they never answer? In this issue? What the main character's mythological creature power is.
Yeah. Because I couldn't
You kind of find out what a lot of them are, but you don't get her answer. And it's because she's doing such a good job of hiding it. And passing is not this person. That is interesting to see. So,
yeah,
there are a lot of mysteries still to be revealed. And at the end of the book, it feels like Wilf's I don't want to spoil it, but there's a moment in the book where it's like stare at the end of this pen from Mission Impossible, from Men in Black.
Mm-hmm.
But you still feel like he knows something's up.
Yes.
So there are still mysteries to be revealed that have me really kind of excited for issue 2.
Yes. Definitely. I hope issue 2 can live up to this issue. I really do.
Same.
This team is on my radar, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure. All right, let's go on. And this is the last book this week. Archer and Armstrong Forever, #2.
Yes.
We don't really get to see the guy on the cover.
Yeah, I think his name's Maw. Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But we get to feel that he's there.
Mm-hmm.
So we discovered in Archer and Armstrong Forever #1 that Armstrong is not as immortal as he once was.
Yeah.
And Archer is not okay. So they do the thing that you would expect them to do, that you would expect anybody in this situation to do when you're immortal and you find out you're not immortal anymore. Try to get your immortality back. But how would you do that? And this is them seeking out all of the great immortality tricks that you've ever heard of. Vampirism, Fountain of Youth, Spring of Life.
The apples, right?
Well, the golden apples is where we get left off.
Oh, okay.
But it's them flying around the globe trying to find these ritualistic things that make you immortal. And as it turns out, every one of them is a scam or a con, or not all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah. Yeah. This it's a fun issue, and I feel like the story is only going to get better. Archer and Armstrong are right in line with me with Quantum and Woody from Valiant in terms of the duos, the funny duos. There's a scene in the book where the meme of Charlie Day from Always Sunny. I think that's Always Sunny, where he does the strings and all the stuff connecting to each other. I can't remember where exactly it's from, but it felt like Abby was doing that.
Yep.
And the last page was just, hey, that looks kind of like this thing that I know about. And then you kind of notice somebody's creeping around. And that's how it ends. And I'm like,
right.
Oh,
it ends on a cliffhanger.
Yes.
Right. It ends on a great cliffhanger.
So good, man. Like this right here, this kind of cements for me why I love Valiant so much, man. Because when Valiant is on, they are on. They are on. And I love this book.
Right. We've been reading another Valiant book that's not really related to any of the traditional Valiant characters. Yeah, we have.
Armorclads.
Armorclads. That might be an example of when Valiant is a little bit off.
Yeah.
And that book has the potential, don't get me wrong. But man, like this and the Harbinger series we just read and the Shadow Man series before that have just been them being just perfect. And remember, Valiant doesn't publish a ton.
Yeah.
They're not putting out 7 or 8 different series at a time. They're definitely not doing multiple stories within a character, like other people are doing right now. And the result is that what comes out is the highest level that these stories come out at. Yeah. And I think it really pays off in a series like this, where you can tell time, energy, budget, editorial staff, everything has been devoted to turning this book into the perfect story right now for these characters.
Yeah. And it feels like an Archer and Armstrong book. They're not reinventing the wheel with this.
Right.
Man, such a good book.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our last book for this week. Whew. Yeah, I know. Head over to comicshoplocator.com and type in the zip code of where you are or where you might be going if you're traveling. I, thank God, have been traveling for a minute. So I won't be using it as much. But if you're going to be traveling this summer or this week or whatever, type in that zip code, find a comic shop nearby to you, or to where you're going to be, and go visit them. Pick up some of these books. Do these things. If you see something, if we talk about something tonight on the show and you weren't going to get it originally and you decided you want it, call your local comic shop. They may not have it in stock, but encourage them to place an order and be cool. Like, they're going to do their best to help you. So, for Jay and the absent Dan, I have been Kyle. This has been In Stores This Week. We will see everybody next week on In Stores This Week, where we will talk about books that are in stores next week. So, hopefully Dan will be back to corral my insanity. And we will talk to you all later.